Magandang araw po mga kaibigan. Happy New Year. I hope everyone is doing well. Ngayon pong araw na ito, sisimulan natin ang ating talakayan sa ating po namang tapatan sa Aristocrat. Ang taong 2020 ay sinasabi pong most challenging, most difficult, at most uncertain year. It was indeed a horrible year. We lost friends, loved ones, and associates due to COVID-19, and some due to extrajudicial killings. We can only pray for their souls' repose and for their bereaved families that they may recover from the loss. We celebrated Christmas differently last December. We had a summer New Year's celebration except for those na may pera upang makabili ng paputok. Meron tayong isang panauhin na matatanong, may asosasyon ba ang paputok sa pagsalubong sa bagong taon? Today, we face the reality of the new year. People have gone back to work physically or virtually. Virtual classes have begun. Housewives still go to market to find prices of prime commodities going up and away. May bagong budget ang pamahalaan. Ito ba ay makatutugon sa pangangailangan ni Juan de la Cruz? Ngayong umaga kasama po natin si Ginang Teresita Angsi. Siya po ang nagtatag ng Movement for the Restoration of Peace and Order at isa sa convener ng Flowers for Lolas. Narito rin po si Ginoong JC Punong Bayan, isang PhD candidate from the best economics school in Diliman. That's the UP School of Economics, si JC Punong Bayan. At ang ating kasama na Executive Director ng Ibon Foundation na nabanggit na front ng komunista. Kasama po natin si Ginoong Sunny Africa. So we will begin our discussions by asking Tita Tessie Angsi, may asosasyon ba ang paputok sa pagsalubong sa bagong taon? From a Chinese tradition, ano po ang inyong pananaw? Good morning.
Good morning po. What do you mean asosasyon sa pagsalubong?
Nakakapag-alis ba ng masamang espiritu ang paputok? Kaya tradisyon.
Pet peeve ko yan. Kasi lahat tayo, lalo na mga scientists natin, we all believe in the science of Feng Shui. Science hindi yung myth, hindi yung legend, hindi yung mga haka-haka. Feng Shui is a science of harmony between man and nature. So bakit ka magpapaputok ng firecrackers? That is very, very bad Feng Shui because you destroy the harmony between man and nature. You destroy property, you kill people, you harm the environment. How can you start the year right by destroying the environment? It's very bad Feng Shui. Bakit sinasabing ingay? Bakit? Kasi nga mali yung pagkakapaniwala dun sa science eh. Dati, ancient China, talagang nagpapaputok ng mga, yung boga ngayon, dati pa yan, yung boga na bamboo. Ginagawa na yan sa China noong unang panahon, nung wala pang firecrackers. Kasi they need to drive away the wild animals who come down after hibernation looking for food. It's a bitter winter, so they have to come down to civilization to look for food. So the Chinese will explode firecrackers to drive them away or drive pestilence away. Kaya magpapaputok ng firecrackers. So bakit natin gagayahin? Sabihin natin, nagpapataboy daw ng malas. Mali yun, nag-a-attract ka ng malas because you destroy the environment.
Okay, very good. That's for the opening statement pa lang. JC Punong Bayan, sa inyong pagsusuri, ano ang nakikita ninyo sa larangan ng ekonomiya ngayong 2021?
Well, Sir Melo, nakita natin na yung 2020 ay napaka-record breaking talaga, ano? Kasi nakita natin na bukod dun sa worst health crisis ng Pilipinas ay naranasan din natin yung worst economic crisis natin since World War II. Mamaya siguro pwede nating tingnan yung mga datos sa in-depth, ano? Pero moving forward, I think napakahalaga ng vaccines, ano. Asahan natin na tulad nung napag-usapan natin kanina ay unti-unti nang nababakunahan ang mga Pilipino at mga foreigner din, pero I think kailangan tingnan, busisiin yung proseso ng procurement at yung distribution ng vaccines kasi ito yung magdidikta ng tempo, ng pace ng ating economic recovery ngayong taong ito. Napaka-uncertain, Sir Melo, ng 2021, pero merong signs of hope, pero magiging mabagal siguro yung recovery natin moving forward.
Okay, thank you. We'd like to welcome Sunny Africa of V1 Foundation. Sunny, nice to see you again. Virtually nga lang.
Happy New Year, Sir Melo, lahat ng mga viewers nyo. Alam niyo, talagang gusto ko maging optimistic sa bagong taon, di ba? Pero I think tulad na nabanggit mo nabanggit din ni Casey. Yung 2020, nasa impyerno talaga tayo eh. Hindi rin dahil sa pandemya, kundi dahil dun sa kakulangan ng pag-respond ng government. So, pag pinapangako sa atin na palapit na tayo sa langit, sa totoo lang, ang tansya namin because of yung kalahagaan ng government intervention, lalo na using the 2021 budget, not just for the vaccines, but for the whole stimulus na kinakailangan ng ekonomiya. Sa sobrang kakapusan at pagtitipid ng administration and the finance peoples, economic managers, parang yung mula sa impyerno natin, actually, in 2021 will still be in purgatory, hinihintay na ma-cleanse lahat ng sins natin. So magdaragon yung problema, unfortunately, kasi yung main lesson from 2020, may magagawa ang gobyerno kung gugustuhin niya. Pero for some reason, ayaw niya gumalaw ng tama at things aren't going to get much better for 2021, unfortunately.
Did I hear you right? Better. It's not bitter, no?
It will be bitter. It will be very, very bitter for 2021. Sa economy yan. Pero sa totoo lang, I think yung impyerno natin sa politics natin will get much worse, especially as 2022 approaches. Di ba yung hindi naman nagbago yung political cycle natin? 2021 is a pre-election year. So lahat ng galaw na administration and our political forces in the traditional political mainstream, unfortunately, everyone's looking forward to 2022. So sa halip na harapin ng maayos yung pandemic, sa halip na harapin yung problems natin with the economy, I think yung obsession with elections, staying in power, all that maneuvering to stay in power, I think will further compromise yung kinakailangan economic recovery natin.
Okay. Mahalaga yung katagang bakuna. Siguro pwede tayong bigyan ng update ni Mrs. Tessie Angsi. Matagal na nga ba yung bakuna rito sa Pilipinas? Ano po ba yung ating impormasyon dito? Yes, madam? Teka, naka-mute po yata kayo. Yan, okay.
Siguro starting November, marami ng mga Chinese nationals ang nagpapabakuna. We brought it to the attention, syempre, of authorities kasi sa akin naman, okay lang sa akin na mabakunahan sila because we don't have much control with them eh. Wala naman tayong basis to touch base with them, especially the POGO workers. So I'm glad that they are being vaccinated because it protects us also if they are protected. Nung nag-umpisa yung pandemya, halos lahat ng flights na bumalik sa China may COVID positive. That means ang daming Chinese nationals na naging COVID positive dito. Umuwi sa China for treatment. Maraming ang resentment doon eh. Galit tayo sa kanila. Sila galit sa atin. Bakit kayo umuwi dito nung may sakit kayo? nung kailangan namin kayo, nililisan ng ninyo ang bayan natin. So they all went home. Ibig sabihin, maraming COVID positive. So when the vaccines started coming and they become vaccinated, sabi ko sa akin, positive yon. It's just that the worry, nasaan yung polisiya mo? Yung worry na they're breaking our laws, that's one. The second is, what if something goes wrong? Who are the people administering it? Are they keeping the cold chain? Yun ang una kong bring up kasi na, how about yung storage? Paano kung may nangyari dahil yung storage mo ay mali? Yung pag-administer mo ay mali? Itong December, mid-December, we got to hear how prevalent it is when one became positive after being vaccinated. But it's 1 out of more than 100,000. Yung dose na yon, yung isang chain na yon na isang bagsakan lang, 200,000 doses yon. 100,000 na nabakunahan, only one became positive. So nag-complain, lumabas yung news, maraming nakaalam. Sa akin, let it be. Unless mayroon kang policy, kasi yan yung gusto ko sanang i-bring up Nasaan kasi yung mga policies ng government natin? Nung April, May, June, raid tayo ng raid. Then watching when we kept raiding and confiscating those things. Those were approved by FDA of Singapore, Japan, Korea. Mas magaling pa tayo sa kanila dahil nire-raid natin at bawal. If it is helping our sick people, bakit hindi natin payagan? Pinapayagan natin ang ampalaya, pinapayagan natin ang VCO, pinapayagan natin ang tawa-tawa para sa dengue. Lianhua Qingwen is an herbal medicine. Bakit hindi natin payagan? But good enough, by end of November,
Napayagan na.
I-approve. Pero my point is, yung policies natin, siguro kailangan nating pag-aralang mabuti. Yung mga clinic na ni-raid nila, Makati, BGC, mga clinic treating all Chinese patients. Aren't they glad that these people are responsible for their own people? They treat the Chinese patients in their own clinic at their own risk. Paano yun? Ni-raid yung mga clinics. Walang mapuntahan tong mga Chinese nationals na gustong magpa-treat. So they are left untreated. And then they mix with our people. Tayo ang hahawahan, hindi ba? Kaya I'm not endorsing na tama yung mga ginagawa nila. Mali yun kasi wala silang permit. But it's also time that we change our policies kasi itong mga pandemyang ganito might still go a long way. Baka mahaba pang haharapin natin. Palitan natin policy natin. Pumapayag naman tayo sa mga albularyo, hindi ba? Yung mga anong tawag nun? Healers, mga faith healers. Bakit itong mga Chinese clinics na ito na nagtitreat ng Chinese patients, why aren't we allowing them?
Okay. The basic question siguro, Madam, is paano nakakapasok yung bakuna? Well, iba pa yung bakuna doon sa PSG. What do you know? Are these vaccines used on POGO workers from Sinopharm or ano ba?
It's a Chinese vaccine. And siyempre, sa kanila, they feel confident because they know, dahil nasa mga Chinese social media yan, even the Chinese leaders had enough confidence to all have been vaccinated. And soldiers, so millions na. At that time, siguro 5 million na ang nabakunahan. So far, wala namang adverse na yung anaphylactic shock from allergies, no? Walang report. May nagsabi sa akin, baka naman kasi hindi nire-report. Sabi ko, no. Because of social media, madali mong marinig kung may mga adverse effects na nangyari. Madaling kumalat yan. WeChat, QQ, mga TikTok na yan, galing China lahat yan . So, I do not know how these vaccines came in. Very early, marami na nagpapa-reserve at sabi, vaccination will start in December. I know they raided a clinic na sinabi doon daw yung ginagawa ay vaccination. May phone number but they didn't find anything. So I really don't know. But maybe it's one of the things that our Department of Health should study. If it is coming in, it is only for Chinese nationals, so be it. Let them get protected because it protects us also.
Okay. Okay. Mabigat ito Pero yung PSG, wala kayong nabalita ron, Madam Tessie?
Ano yun? I mean, the vaccines that were given, they were legitimate. Legitimate yung sources. It came from official channels. So, I think it's good. Kaya lang, hindi naman dapat lumaki yung ganyan kung hindi sinikreto. Because we will all understand why it is needed. Maiintindihan natin bakit kailangan isikreto yung ganyan. Hindi naman especially since official channels yan, bakit kailangan isikreto yung mga news na ganyan?
Okay. Okay, let's leave it at that. Let's go to another topic. Medyo controversial ito, yung ekonomiya natin. JC, from where you are, how do you look at the country's economy? Sabi, recovery is in the offing for 2021. Are there telltale signs that we will indeed recover?
Siguro Sir Melo, I can share some slides para mas being structured yung sasabihin ko rin konting slides lang naman ito sir para lang makita natin yung extent kung ano talaga yung nangyari sa ekonomiya natin.
Please.
So for example, Sir Melo, so dito tayo magsisimula sa ekonomiya natin kung saan yung GDP nakita natin na bumagsak ng 16.9% noong second quarter and 11.5% noong third quarter. Ito yung pinakamalala since World War II inungusan lang nito yung economic crisis natin since martial law kung saan may 9 consecutive quarters tayo ng negative growth, pero since then ay ito na yung pinakamalala. Even worse ay tayo yung pinakamalalang economic growth na sa ASEAN. Nakita natin na nung second quarter, nangusan lang tayo ng konti ng Malaysia, pero nung third quarter, nangulelat talaga tayo. Pinaka-interesting dito, Sir Melo, yung sa Vietnam kasi hindi sila nagkaroon ng recession kasi nagkaroon sila ng maagap na pandemic response with localized lockdowns and effective contact tracing. Sa Pilipinas, may mga surveys din na nagpakita na especially noong April, mga 71% of firms ang temporarily nagsara. Tapos sinundan ito ng survey ng World Bank na 77% ng firms ang nagsara. And yet noong July, 15% na yung permanently nagsara na. And nakita natin yung permanent na closures ay makita across many different sectors. Ito yung gusto nating iwasan kasi mahirap mag-recover yung ating ekonomiya kung permanently nagsara na yung maraming mga negosyo. Although marami din naman Sir Melo na mga industriya na actually nag-thrive din naman, especially yung mga businesses na may kinalaman sa internet. For example, yung sa Shopee and Lazada, yung sa yung mga food deliveries, Netflix, Spotify. So meron din namang growth. Bagamat so itong pandemic ay nagbigay din ng opportunities to transform our economy. Mas maraming nagre-rely sa work from home arrangements saka sa mga deliveries online din. Pero having said that, bumaba din yung income ng average Filipino, yung GDP per capita to its lowest level in the past 5 years. So one way to interpret this is as if yung economic gains in the past 5 years have been erased by the pandemic. When it comes to the job market naman po, nakita natin na yung unemployment rate pumalo din sa pinakamataas na level since the records began, yung comparable records ng 2005. Bagamat bumababa na yan, actually mas notable Sir Melo yung pagbaba ng labor force participation. Ito yung mga tao na eligible na mag-work, so working age population, pero hindi sila nag-opt-in sa labor force kasi for example, gusto nila mag-aral or discouraged sila sa job prospects or nagstay sila sa bahay para mag-alaga ng kanilang mga anak, especially sa online learning na in-oversee nila. So hangga't hindi nakakabangon itong labor force participation ay mahirap makarecover yung ating ekonomiya moving forward. So hangga't hindi nagbubukas yung ating mga schools ay mahirap makarecover yung ating ekonomiya. As for OFWs naman, as of December, I think to 388,000 at least yung mga na-repatriate na. At meron itong significant na implication dun sa remittances na for the longest time have been keeping our economy afloat. Nakita natin na yung growth ng remittances is already in the red. So nakita natin yung average na growth nito ay for the first time in a very long time ay nasa negative na. So nakikita natin yung mga ilang buwan na negative yung growth ng remittances, and meron itong implications as well sa recovery ng ating consumer-driven economy. I'm gonna go ahead and skip some, pero gusto ko lang itong i-highlight din, Sir Melo, na amid all this economic contraction ay tumaas din yung economic misery. And one way to see this is doon sa hunger rate na pumalo sa highest level on record based sa social weather stations. Almost 1 out of 3 Filipino households ang nagsabi na nakaranas sila ng gutom. So I think meron itong implication, pwede natin i-relate ito doon sa 2021 budget na 10% lang na mas malaki compared sa 2020 budget. And amid all this, napaka-importante, tulad nung nabanggit ni Sir Sunny, napaka-importante ng role ng gobyerno, and yet from what we've seen ay hindi sapat yung ginagastos ng gobyerno to give enough economic aid for the poor, yung mga workers, tsaka yung mga nagugutom, tsaka yung mga businesses as well. So ito Sir Melo, yung kailangan nating tingnan in this year, kailangan makita natin aggressive na fiscal spending ng gobyerno. Pero from all indications, mukhang hindi yun ang characteristic ng 2021 budget.
Ano yung characteristic ng 2021 budget then?
Well, magandang tanong yan, at saka siguro mas maraming time ang kailangan dyan. Pero from the analysis na nakikita natin, Sir Melo, ay well, wala pa tayo personally kopya nung final version ng 2021 budget at hindi pa naman ito. Well, napirmahan na actually. Pero nakita natin na napaka-infrastructure heavy nito, Sir Melo. So marami sa budget increases sa 2021 budget ay ilalaan sa infrastructure. Sinasabi ng economic managers as led by Secretary Dominguez na yung build yung magiging solusyon sa ating economic recovery. It will help our economy bounce back. Pero napakaraming factors para magsabi na hindi ito ang solusyon, kasi in the past ay merong underspending ang gobyerno at nahirapan silang gumastos ng pera. So kahit natapunan mo ng pera yung mga agencies ay hindi sila nakakagastos enough on infrastructure. So doon pa lang, Sir Melo, nakita natin as well in the middle of the pandemic na instead of lumaki yung government spending, mag-grow siya ng mas malaki, ay in fact ay lumiit pa yung contribution ng government spending in the middle of the pandemic. So hirap na gumastos ang gobyerno in the middle of the pandemic, and I'm not sure how they're going to solve that in the coming months.
Oh, okay. Sunny, from your end, how do you look at it? Sinusuri niyo yung budget over the years, and you've seen it, and you've said that it has not responded to the needs of the people.
Again, tulad ni JC, nag-effort naman kami na pag-aralan sana over the holidays yung napirmahan na budget, but it's we don't have a copy yet, but we can presume actually from the press releases there's not going to be much change from what was discussed during the BICAM, especially from the Senate version. I think regarding the budget lamang, may 3 major points ako, no? Una, it's only a 9.9% increase from the 2020 budget. That's super disproportionate to the problem at hand. The economy is contracted in 2020, will continue to contract at least the first quarter of 2021. For a 9.9% budget increase compared to 2020, medyo pathetic siya. Kasi the average budget increase in the post-Marcos era was 11.1%. So actually, the 2021 budget is a below average increase among all our government budgets.
Really?
It's actually even a smaller increase than the 2 years of the Duterte administration. Nitong 2020, the GAA passed was 13.6% increase from the year before. Tapos also in, I think 2017, there's about a 24% increase. So parang, if in the 2020 budget, it's 13.6% increase, tapos 24% for 2016, doesn't show na the government is intent on stimulating anything.
Okay.
So point number one namin yan. Point number two, I think it's super important to stress yung na-raise ni JP. To insist on the 1.1 trillion build infrastructure, then sa amin is bordering on deceitfulness na eh. To claim that that is going to create the multiplier effect to boost the economy. It's not true because one, infrastructure spending has been increasing in the first 4 years of the Duterte administration. But despite that, economic growth has been slowing in every year of the Duterte administration. So that's kind of a crude analysis, but basically it shows how you can't rely too much on infrastructure. And our second point around infrastructure, especially the big ticket projects, a lot of the budgets aren't going to be spent in the Philippines. They're going to be spent on imported materials, equipment, machinery, contractors, worst case, maybe even laborers. So a lot of the infrastructure spending, especially big ticket projects, will be spent on stimulating foreign economies like China, Japan, and all these other countries. So parang, I think that's very problematic in terms of the government taking responsibility for the problem in 2021 and actually, kumbaga, putting their money where their mouth is, genuinely stimulating the economy. I mean, marami pong pwede sabihin, but I think we have a very problematic 2021 budget. It's not reflective of the problems of millions of Filipinos. Si JC mentioned na the millions of unemployed Filipinos. Unfortunately, there's no number for income impact of COVID because every 3 years lamang yung family income expenditure survey. Pero as a sort of rough indicator, the DSP comes out with a quarterly survey on households with savings. We were very surprised from the first quarter of the year to the fourth quarter of the year, as much as 2.6, maybe 3.2 million Filipino families lost their savings. So again, as a sort of an indirect indicator, the reason so many Filipinos wipe out their savings is because their incomes collapsed and their savings were so low to begin with. As of the end of the year, only 1/4 of Filipino families had any savings, which means 3/4 of Filipinos, isang kahig isang tuka sila. And I think that's the problem that's invisible to the economic managers that are so obsessed with infrastructure. And as a closing point, it's definitely an elite-driven budget kasi the biggest beneficiaries of infrastructure projects are real estate developers. They're the ones benefiting from a boost in the property values of their real estate developments or commercial projects. So kumbaga, the government, instead of subsidizing people's consumption amid such misery, instead of supporting micro, small, and medium enterprises amid such the worst economic collapse in Philippine history, the government, in effect, with their transport-heavy build infrastructure, they actually subsidize in the profits of real estate developers. And alam naman natin, a lot actually of our politicians and their business allies are into real estate development.
Okay. Siguro maganda ring pag-aralan natin yung budget na inilaan ng gobyerno sa agriculture. Because whether we like it or not, the pandemic taught us na pag nagkaroon ng kahirapan dahilan sa pandemyang ito, na nasabayan pa ng natural disasters, we may not have enough food for our people. I don't know whether you saw kung gaano kalaki o gaano kaliit yung inilaan para sa Department of Agriculture and its other agencies, JC and Sunny.
So JC muna ba? Kaya more updated data.
Yeah. JC.
Well, as I said, Sir Melo, we haven't had the chance yet to study the 2021 budget in detail. Although I will say na nakita natin sa GDP data na yung agriculture is one of the more robust sectors in the economy. In fact, hindi ito nag-contract in the middle of the pandemic kasi to begin with ay hindi naman nandito yung mga transactions saka yung mga markets kung saan kailangan ng matinding social distancing. In fact, ang pinaka napuruhan, Sir Melo, ay yung service sector as one would expect, followed by industry, and then yung so tremendous losses in these sectors. Pero yung agriculture actually dodged a bullet here in the middle of the pandemic. So some are saying na this only underscores yung importance ng agriculture, as you said. Pero we still have to look at the data. I'm sorry, I don't have the data yet on the 2021 budget allocations on agriculture.
Yeah, but looking at the press releases, parang nasa top 10 pero hindi ganong kalaki ang budget. Malaki pa rin yung mga nauna, no? Sunny?
Well, actually, Sir Melo, again, without having seen the final budget, may inertia actually in the government in terms of agriculture spending. Historically, again, since 1986, the agriculture budget has never exceeded 3 to 5%. So I think it's even without seeing the final 2021 budget, I'm pretty sure nandun pa rin tayo with the agriculture budget taking up less than, I think, in all likelihood, less than 3 to 4%, at most actually baka 3% pa nga of the 2021 budget. Pero again, what I'm kind of sure of, when we looked at the infrastructure spending of the government, of course, part of it is for irrigation. But it was so striking that, again, nabanggit nyo nga, nabanggit ni JC, despite agriculture being that little parang ray of hope amid the economic collapse, the budget for the National Education Administration, amidst this huge build infrastructure offensive, was actually decreased by about 5 billion pesos yata. So para sa amin, that's again a key indicator of what kind of infrastructure are you developing. If you're not building the pinaka-basic infrastructure for agriculture, which is expanding and maintaining your irrigation facilities, I think it was about that 10 to maybe 13% cut in 2021 from last year's budget. It doesn't show actually that they're paying any attention to agriculture. But again, I haven't seen the final agriculture data, but I'm medyo 100% sure it's not going to be much larger than before, if it's even larger. But the infrastructure aspect of it for irrigation was actually cut in 2021 compared to last year.
Okay. You mentioned very critical terms here. Madam Tessie, coming from the movement for the restoration of peace and order, when people no longer have savings, when they no longer have jobs, do you see a surge in crimes against property and against persons?
Oh yes, definitely. No, it's Binondo is the hub kasi of commercial activities. Even if your factories are in Taguig or in Laguna, for example, yung Yakult is in Laguna, the distribution, the center of commercial hub is still Divisoria and Binondo. So when Divisoria and Binondo are shaken, then the business climate is badly affected. So you can see, at the height of the pandemic, some stores closed very early, not because of the pandemic, but because of fear of looting. When people become hungry, then they resort to desperate measures. It's good, no, that we have a very efficient mayor, Mayor Isko Moreno. The 6 incidents of jewelry store heist that led to 5 deaths. Bakit nanakawan na nila, papatayin pa nila? That is what I couldn't understand. 5 people died in those jewelry store heist. It was solved because the mastermind was the mastermind was held responsible, and he's no longer with us. And it stopped, no, after the 6th. Pero yan yung paulit-ulit that I kept reminding the Binondo businessmen. You are not just Binondo businessmen. You are Filipinos in our economy. If you don't report crimes against you, if you don't cooperate with the authorities when things happen, then it escalates fast because it's easy money.
Mm-hmm.
Yung jewelry store, kung hindi pa ang napatay ay police bodyguard, police na nagmo-moonlight, nagpa-part-time as bodyguard. He was shot right in front of the car with his employers. The employer was shot also on the foot. Kung hindi pa nangyari yon, they still won't cooperate. Isa lang yung nag-cooperate nung nauna. March 17 ang unang case na yan. March 17 nag-umpisa and lasted till September. Na-solve lang yan September nung nahuli yung mastermind because they cooperated. No? Isang lesson yan, parang napakaliit na lesson with big repercussion na if you cooperate, if you report, and things are addressed very early, parang pandemic yan eh. Geometric progression. When one succeeds in getting easy money, then it becomes 2, becomes 4, becomes 8. So ganyan yung nangyayari. The fear now is when people are hungry, no? Sabi nga ni JC and ni Sunny, when people are without jobs, yung working force, no? That is the most crucial sa economy natin eh. The workforce who live on hand-to-mouth existence from one meal to the next meal. Kung walang trabaho at walang income, desperation may drive them into crimes.
Okay.
And that is what is scaring a lot of people. So, mabuti naman ngayon, kasi maraming pulis ang nagkalat because of the pandemic. They are watching out for people who are breaking protocols. So, isa rin yan siguro na dapat na tignan natin. Nasaan yung mga priorities natin? Pinaghuhuli natin yung buntis na hindi nakamas, 2 buwan nating ikinulong, 60-year-old na nanay na nagtotong its. Kinulong natin 2 buwan. Kung hindi pa natulungan ng mga paralegal natin, hindi pa mapapakawalan yung 3 nanay na yan. Imagine yung repercussions na walang nanay na nagbabantay sa mga bata. Ang mga bata nagugutom, pilfering, magnanakaw sa grocery kahit na isang balot na tinapay lang o isang balot na biskwit dahil sa gutom, di ba? Think of Les Miserables. Just 1 piece of bread, di ba? Ganyan yung mangyayari. So yung mga pulis natin, tama naman, nabandayan ninyo yung mga nagba-break ng protocols, but don't close your eyes. At the same time, you are also keeping peace and order.
Okay. Madam Tessie, I just got an information that 21-year-old Filipino-Chinese was kidnapped by 2 car-riding men along 11th Street in New Manila last December 31st while the guy was riding in his bicycle.
Yan pa yung isang napakasakit ng mga Pilipino, napakalalang sakit ng mga Pilipino. That text, that video became viral, no? Dahil nanggaling sa barangay. Why are we so irresponsible? Kung totoo yan, you endanger the victim. Kung hindi totoo yan, you are creating panic. On news on attempted kidnapping, on news on possibles, on news na hoax, basta kidnapping, SOP namin, news blackout. There were incidents, no, that we even have to call the mainstream news media and beg them, kung kunyari may nangyari talaga, no, in the past, they've been very helpful naman, even ABS and GMA, no, we call them and tell them don't endanger the lives of the victims by scattering news like that. Kung hindi totoo, you create panic. Kung totoo, you endanger the life of the victim. Napaka-irresponsible natin. Why are we rejoicing on people's misery? Diba? Nawawala yung bata, nag-bicycle, nawawala. Malay natin, baka naman nagtanan kasi 21 years old, o baka napagalitan. Bakit natin ikinakalat ang mga news na ganyan? So, please, please, please be responsible on what you click and what you forward.
Okay, thank you. JC and Sunny, it's been said that the economy has been afloat because of strong consumer spending. And the consumer spending comes from remittances and BPOs. Okay? Malaki sweldo mga nasa BPOs eh. Pero kung marami nang umuwi sa Pilipinas, baka wala nang gagastusin to keep the economy afloat. Ano ang tingin ninyo rito, JC and Sunny? JC?
Yes, Sir Melo. So yung ating ekonomiya, tulad ng pinakita ko kanina ay nakita natin yung remittances are actually in the red na. At hindi ito surprising considering that more than 300,000 or even a lot more have already been repatriated and stranded abroad. Pero yung ating ekonomiya, so bakit importante ito? Kasi yung pong remittances na yun, these feed into yung consumption ng ating mga pamilya, yung mga families left behind by OFWs. At nakita natin na yung ekonomiya natin is 2/3 comprised of consumer spending. So napakalaki talaga ng importansya ng consumer spending. At yun, so nakakalungkot lang din na yung piso kasi natin, Sir Melo, ay lumalakas in the past couple of months, in fact for the most part of 2020. So yung peso value ng remittances na yun, maliit na nga yun, tapos yung peso value pa nun ay lumiliit dahil dun sa appreciation of the peso on account of yung weak importation natin. So I guess dito pumapasok, Sir Melo, yung importansya ng economic aid for OFW. So as many of them have already been repatriated, kailangan makita natin na yung gobyerno ay sapat yung ayuda na ibinibigay para sa OFWs for them to be able to weather the reduction in their incomes and savings.
Okay, Sunny, please.
Sir Melo, actually, that's a good point. Yung remittances, as of the last BSP data, for the first 10 months of the year, it's down to 24.6 billion from 24.9 billion in the same period last year. So that's almost a 1% contraction. But I think we have to dig deeper into that. First, deployments also fell. In the first 9 months of the year, there were only 682,000 OFWs deployed in the first 9 months of the year. And that's actually 60% less than 1.7 million deployed in the same period last year. So kumbaga, the contraction in remittances now isn't actually counting yet the fallen deployments in 2020. So we can expect more downward pressures on remittances in 2021. Tapos secondly, again, it's so hard to get data from the government, but as of, I think, end of October, DOLE reported about 500, I'm not sure, 505,000, maybe 510,000 OFWs losing their jobs or displaced. So para sa amin, actually, even the 1% contraction in remittances for 2020, that doesn't yet capture OFWs not going abroad and exerting downward pressure in remittances in 2021. Secondly, when we looked at the breakdown of the mga remittance profile, actually, the biggest chunk of remittances that nadagdagan came from the US. So may suspicion kami, it's hard to confirm. I think about remittances from the US increased about $700 million. Nag-compensate siya for the collapse in remittances in the rest of the world. And again, may suspicion kami that might also be from a lot of mga migrant families in the US supporting yung mga relatives nila in the Philippines. So even that 1% contraction, that might also be despite an increase in support from mga resident overseas Filipinos in the US. So parang things are going to get worse, I think, for 2021, especially the global economy is it's floundering. A lot of the big capitalist economies like the US and the UK, they're actually struggling right now, and these are major sources of remittances. So parang putting all that together, hindi lang uncertainty hinaharap natin for 2021 in terms of remittances. With lower deployments in 2021, with possibly yung lifeline of support from overseas Filipinos to their families here, that actually might get worse pa rin in this year na tayo, in 2021.
Okay. Let me ask.
Sorry, may add din ako. I think important yung na-raise in JC about the falling labor force participation rate. Kasi I think we can also presume the falling labor force participation rate is because a lot of Filipinos have stopped looking for work na, either because of takot nila sa COVID or because walang prospects dun sa jobs market. And if we restore the labor force participation rate, assuming it's the same way as it was last October, in October 2019, yung official number of Filipinos would increase actually to about 5.8 million. The government only reports 3.8 million unemployed Filipinos, but we suspect that's because at least 2 million Filipinos don't have jobs, don't have jobs, but didn't look for work because nga of the economic conditions. And I think that's so important kasi the number of employed fell this in 2020 compared to the year before. As of October, there were I think 2.6 or 2.7 million less employed Filipinos in October 2020 compared to the year before. So that even that high unemployment rate reported by JC, it's actually underreporting because there are at least 2 more million invisibly unemployed Filipinos, not counted because of the peculiarity of how we define unemployed.
Okay. May tanong dito from Alden for Madam Tessie. Speaking of kidnapping, medyo off topic daw. Whatever happened to the kidnapped statue of the Comfort Woman? Ano na
We remain to be the only country in the world that succumbed to Japanese pressure. The last one is Berlin, di ba? Pinipilit nila na tanggalin, no? But the government did not succumb. Tayo pa lang, we stand on record as the only country na lumuhod sa mga Hapon and remove the statue. Tapos, we succeeded in getting a very nice place, no? Pinaggastusan talaga namin, pinrepair, pinalandscape yung peace zone sa Baclaran Church. Ang ganda-ganda, i-install na sana, biglang nawala, ni hijack, no? We were ready last year to file a case against the artist who was safekeeping the statue. Kasi bayad na yon, it doesn't belong to him. Ang sabi niya, unknown people took it away, which is impossible dahil napakabigat noon. Kami nga, we had to hire a forklift and truck to transport, no? Paano mawawala na biglang unknown people took it in the night daw na kinuha na lang. Basta nawala. So we're holding him responsible. We're sorry to do it to him kasi he might also be a victim. Maaaring tinakot siya o dahil sa laking pangangailangan niya sa pera and he succumbed. We don't know, no? Maraming possibilities, but we hold him responsible kasi wala siyang sinasabi sa amin. I mean, tuloy-tuloy ang pag-uusap namin until 3 days before the installation, bigla siyang nag-silent. Bigla ang tawag noon yung iaano mo, ghost naging ghost siya, hindi na namin siya makontak. We asked policemen to contact him at yun ang sagot niya sa police. No? Pero wala siyang report, wala siya kahit barangay report na may ninakaw sa kanya yung statue na yon. So hijack pa rin. Status is it's lost. We're giving it up for loss. We're trying to raise funds to make a completely new one. Naabutan ng pandemic. So priority talaga is yung mga gastusin namin sa pandemic, no?
Okay.
Napakaliit ng grupo namin, but we spent 150 million in delivering, distributing PPEs, food, all over the country. No?
Okay. Yeah. So may kaso raw ba yung artist? Nakasuhan daw ba?
Yeah, naka-ready na actually yung kaso last year pa eh. Hindi lang namin final and also dala na rin sa awa namin, no? We are all dealing with the pandemic. I'm sure he himself is also suffering. So we delayed it and this year we have to pick up where we left off last year.
Okay. Before I open the floor to our colleagues from the media who may have a lot of questions for our resource persons, let me ask you this. Whether we like it or not, this is 2021. The first half, according to some doctors, would be just the same and probably the vaccines would come by June or July. So July, baka may bakuna na at makikinabang na ang taong bayan. Now, the question is, how do we isolate the vaccines from petty political maneuverings? Because the second half of the year is the time to file the certificate of candidacy for national elections. Yung mga nananaginip magpangulo, pangalawang pangulo at mag-senador, magpa-file na by October. How do we insulate or isolate the vaccines from petty partisan politics? Any takers?
First comment from Sir Melo. I think the most important thing right now is the most important question: do we trust the government to distribute the vaccines equitably? Our basic problem is that, well, may original sin pala tayo. So the original sin is that the government is not spending enough to buy vaccines. So yung allotments nila, there's a big portion of it na actually privatized, na relying on government, on corporate donations. With strangely, if you're a corporate donor, may claim ka to the vaccines, half the vaccines you're donating. So that's weird kasi, di ba, there was all this bruhaha na may prioritization daw, health workers, elderly, ganon. But ang understanding namin, at least from media releases, if you're a corporation, you're donating, may 1:1 siya. Half of the donated vaccines actually allotment for the corporations na. So problem na yun kasi that creates a gap na kaagad doon na just because may pera ka, you get to stake a claim on the vaccines. So that's one problem. Kung original sin is the problem of the procurement, at times si JC, alam ko kating-kating na siya, marami siya comment about that. If the original sin is yung kulang yung vaccines, the next problem there is the only way to actually ensure transparency with the vaccines, if it's all publicly procured, kasi kung publicly procured yan, theoretically, you have all the mga transparency mechanisms in place because it was procured using public funds. Ngayon, it's so straightforward. There's a prioritization scheme set out by the IATF. If the government, say, assume mo nga, buys 100 million vaccines na naka-face nga dun sa, I think parang 25 million, then 45 million in subsequent years, kapag nandun na yung listahan mo at nandun na yung vaccines, theoretically, you can open it to the public naman eh. Open it to the public where the vaccines were procured, how much were procured at any particular time, and who they were distributed to. Then let the people, let civil society groups, let academics vet yung data na yon. And that's something that they can do very straightforwardly kung hindi sila takot how to distribute the vaccines. But yun nga, I'm going to assume na we can trust the government, but it's so straightforward. Identify how many vaccines were bought, and then publicize the list of who were given the vaccines, and then pa-check mo. Hindi na makilala ka pangalan. And of course, may privacy issues ka. Pero, kumbaga, it's just being transparent with the records about who they were given. And then let outsiders, yun ang pinaka-key doon, let outsiders, not political stakeholders, not IATF, not the president, let outsiders from civil society look at that data.
Okay. Madam Tessie, nagtaas kayo ng kamay eh. Sige po.
Yeah. If there is one thing that we learned in our 9 months of very frantic and very frenzied work distributing PPEs nationwide, it is how inefficient our government is when it comes to distribution. Government hospitals, sabihin sa'yo, it's so ironic. Philippine Navy Hospital, Philippine Army Hospital, Philippine Police Hospital were begging us for PPEs. But our PPEs are stuck there in the civil defense. Nandun sa Office of Civil Defense. Pero sila, they beg us for PPEs. We gave everybody, no? Kung nakapag-distribute kami from Tawi-Tawi, Basilan and Holo, hanggang sa Apari, hanggang sa Batanes, hindi magawa ng government. Tapos yung vaccine, we are going to depend on the government to distribute. I think Sunny's idea is perfect. Let the private sector buy what they can. Let individuals, parang bibili ka na lang ng antibiotic sa mercury drug para maging available throughout. And the government, ang responsibility mo lang is for the yung mga 4-piece recipients. Nakita mo lang yung nangyari sa SAP eh. Di ba? Ilan yung hanggang ngayon, wala pang natatanggap. Mga PWDs, mga seniors na 80 years old. Bakit? Kasi nga, very inefficient yung distribution system. So why not let the private sector import and then announce where it is possible, magbigay lang tayo ng SRP, suggested retail price, control the price, and then where it is available, and then maglista ka na kung gusto mo magpalista, no? Like what Manila is doing now, no? May pre-registration ka na if you want the vaccine. Kasi I'm so disappointed. Yung makita mo lang yung mga test kits na nasayang, test kits na nag-expired. That's because we cannot have, wala tayong efficient distribution system. How can you, it's criminal to let test kits expire when people need it so badly. It's criminal to have medicines expire when we need it so badly. Ang dami naming natanggap na vitamins during our distribution. Pati mga national penitentiary, nabigyan namin ng mga vitamins dahil sa bigay ng mga DOH ng malapit nang mag-expire na medicines, na vitamins. Tinanggihan lang namin yung mga vitamins that need prescription, and hindi vitamins, yung mga gamot that need prescription. Kasi baka makarating sa unintended victims dahil pinamimigay namin yan sa mga sa buong bansa, makarating sa iba, di ba? Even our typhoon, yung typhoon Ulysses namin and Ronnie na mga interventions namin, makikita mo talaga na napaka-inefficient. Tayo ay bayan ng makalamidad. Bakit hanggang ngayon hindi tayo marunong ng quick response? Naiipon ang mga relief goods nang hindi na di-distribute. Bakit? It's criminal at this time.
Okay.
So these are the things that we need to address. At siguro, ako ayoko na lang kasing punahin sa akin, in spite and despite government, let us just do what we do well to help the government. Punuan natin ang kanilang pagkukulang dahil wala naman, tayo rin naman ang magiging biktima kung hindi tayo tumulong.
Okay. Well said. JC, ikaw naman, kanina ka pa naghahanda.
Mr. Melo. So I think napaka-certain na as long as yung vaccines ay hindi pa nadidistribute as soon as possible ay lumalaking chance na mapolitika talaga itong vaccines. At yung timing couldn't be more unfortunate. Pero tulad nung nabanggit ni Ma'am Teresita ay napakalaki nung kakulangan doon sa kapasidad ng gobyerno para i-distribute yung vaccines. And yung sa point naman ni Sir Sunny about the budget, I will note na 70 billion yung well, in excess of 70 billion yung nilaan, pero 2.5 billion lang yung actually meron ng paghuhugutan na pondo na inauthorize ng Kongreso. Yung 70 billion pesos for vaccines ay nilagay for some reason ng mga kongresista sa unprogrammed funds. So ibig sabihin ay hindi pa talaga definite yung pagkukunan ng pera na yun at malamang ay iaasa doon sa mga loans from multilateral agencies and other governments possibly. So parang nakakapagtaka lang na yung 2021 budget ang pinaka-importanting budget sa kasaysayan ng Pilipinas, pero bakit hindi sapat yung nilaan para dun sa vaccines na napaka-crucial dun sa recovery ng ating ekonomiya at of course dun sa ating health crisis. So aside from that, ay actually wala parang as far as I know, wala pa akong nakitang budget allocation para dun sa distribution mismo ng vaccines kasi ang parang nilagyan lang nila ng pondo ay yung pagbili mismo ng vaccines, pero paano mo i-distribute yun? Meron bang gagastusin ng gobyerno para dun sa cold storage facilities, for example? Kasi kung meron ka mang pambili ng bakuna pero kung wala ka namang ref or parang cold storage facility ay hindi magiging sapat or useless yung effort mo. So parang this betrays a bit of parang short-sightedness on the part of Congress na parang you had several months to craft a COVID budget pero bakit hindi nyo na-incorporate ang mga bagay na ito doon sa final version?
Okay. May biro nga eh. Okay na sana yung bakuna, yung pagkakargahan. Wag mo lang daw idadaan sa EDSA. Baka mapaso dahil heavy traffic.
Yun nga, Sir Melo. Tsaka may narinig din ako na may mga articles din na, for example, kailangan i-marshal daw yung mga restaurants. For example, yung Dippin' Dots na meron silang mga ref na talagang parang cold storage facility na eh. So parang in that sense, I think kailangan din ng imagination on the part of government na i-marshal din yung resources ng private sector as much as possible.
Yeah, natanong ko na si Secretary Harry Roque dyan eh. Sabi niya, meron na ikang in place dyan eh. O di sige, titingnan natin. Kaya lang, mas maganda, klarado, nasaan yung facilities na yan, asan yung mga reefer trucks na yan, paano ka magdadala ng bakuna doon sa Tawi-Tawi, doon sa Sulu, doon sa Batanes, at iba pang lugar. No? We have time for questions. Kabilang sa magtatanong si Celerina Monte of Daily Manila Shimbun. Yes, good morning, Celerina. Good morning.
Good morning po. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
You can hear me? Hello, you can hear me?
Of course. And we can see
Okay.
you. Thank you.
Okay. Ano to, medyo out of topic nga kasi I just want to follow up doon kay Alden na question kanina, if I may. Tapos pupunta rin ako doon sa topic ng vaccine, if ever.
Please.
Okay. Kay Ma'am Angsi po, follow up ko lang yung regarding po doon sa statue po na you have mentioned na you're planning to have another one na replacement. When do you intend to have that? And yung pong pagpa-file lang kaso doon sa artist, you said na itutuloy nyo this year. So how soon could we expect the filing of charges? And ano pong klaseng kaso po yung i-charge nyo?
Okay, yung madali. Naka-ready na yung kaso. We will contact the artist one last time. Give him one last chance, no? Kasi last year pa naka-ready yung kaso. But give him one last chance na paalam sa amin kung nasaan yung statue. Then we'll start to raise funds to build another statue. The place is ready. Maayos na, maganda. Very professional yung pagkakaayos ng lugar dun sa Baclaran Church, no? Doon muna namin ilalagay until ang government natin ay pumayag na sa public place ilagay. Sana na one day magkaroon tayo ng leader na papayag na magkaroon ng memorial dito sa Comfort Women. This year, 3 ang lola na namatay. Handful na lang ang natitira sa kanila. No? Average age nila is 89 years old to 96 years old. So halos lagas na ang grupo nila, pero hinihintay pa rin nila na sana magkaroon tayo ng memorial. Sana naman by April, no, yung pag-celebrate natin, pagko-commemorate natin ng end of World War II, sana ay ma-install na ang statue na yan. Salamat.
Okay. Go ahead. Hello.
Freeze.
Celerina?
Another question po regarding naman. Hello.
Yes, go ahead.
Regarding naman, yes. You cannot hear me?
Yes, go
Regarding
ahead.
naman po dun sa COVID vaccine. I'm wondering kay Ma'am Angsi again. May alam po ba kayo na since merong yung mga PSG ay nakapagpa-vaccine, meron bang mga Chinese dito sa Pilipinas or Filipino-Chinese na nakapag-avail ng vaccine dito sa Pilipinas din?
Karamihan yung Chinese nationals. I said at the very least 100,000 of them. 200,000 doses, 2 doses na ng group, no? Pero as early as nung November, nung lumabas yung mga advertisements, may nagsabi na 20,000 na nabakunahan nila, no? As early as November. So, ang sa akin, inuulit ko, maganda na lang na protected na sila kasi wala talaga eh. We're very, very slow. mean, if the private sector is doing what it can, let it be. No, their protection is also our protection. I know it is against the law. Gina-justify naman nila yung pati yung smuggling. Pero since hindi naman natin kaya, anong gusto natin? I-file na ng criminal case, yung mga nagpabakuna na yan. Anong gusto mong gawin? Ikulong natin. Pinagpaperahan lang yung mga raid nila doon sa mga Chinese herbal medicine, mga raid nila sa clinic has become extortion policies, no, doon sa yung ilan na alam namin, ano, pati mga sasakyan na raid, pinaparansom back. I mean, kaya yan, overall talaga we need to take a look at the policies of dealing with a pandemic that we haven't dealt before. Maraming dapat baguhin. Hindi pwedeng ang IATF natin ay panay general ang nandyan. No? Nasaan ang mga private sector na nakakaalam? Nasaan ang Chinese-Filipino community dun sa IATF? Bakit hindi nila ang Federation of Filipino-Chinese Chamber of Commerce to be part of the IATF? Lalo na sa distribution ng vaccine. Why don't they mobilize these people who may be more efficient than they? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Sel, meron pa?
Melo, sorry. Yes. Ma'am, sorry. Yung 100,000 na Chinese, they are purely Chinese, not Filipino-Chinese. At dito po ba sila nagpa-vaccine?
Yes, there are a few Chinese Filipinos that I know na bakunahan na, but karamihan ay mga POGO workers. So they're more efficient than us. No, saludo ako sa kanila. Nakapag-source sila ng vaccine. I don't know how, I don't know where, but they were able to do it. No, how I wish I could avail of it. 9 months na ako, four times pa lang ako nakalabas at very low abiding ako. Humihingi pa ako ng rapid pass sa IATF para makalabas lang. Even for very urgent errands, no? Mapupunta ako sa PNP headquarters to turn over donations ng mga equipment. Hihingi pa ako kasi very low abiding ako, no? Let's still abide by the law, but let us not punish those who are doing what they can to cope despite the inefficiency of our own government.
Ma'am, sorry, Sinopharm din po. Other pharmaceutical
company.
company.
I-advertise, but it's the Chinese vaccines.
Okay.
Okay, sige po. Thank you.
All right. Generic.
Pareho naman yung dalawa Pareho naman yung composition ng dalawa. The Sinovac and the Sinopharm. Iba sila sa Pfizer na that's why that needed 80 degree below zero, no? Ito attenuated, yung usual na practice natin sa polio vaccine, sa measles vaccine, attenuated virus, no? So pareho yung dalawa, whichever it is, at least merong nababakunahan, no? How I wish we are as efficient as they in importing and buying these vaccines for our own people. Hindi na bali sa amin na kahit maumpisahan na lang mga businessmen. Hindi na rin bali. Parang sa akin, as wide as possible ang mabakunahan, it protects other people rin.
Okay. Let me ask you, ano pong nakikita ninyong kinabukasan natin, given the facts and figures that you shared? Ano ang pwede nating panghawakan that 2021 will be much better than 2020? Sunny?
Sa mga comment regarding the vaccines, related naman sa tanong niyo, yung reality kasi, with 110 million Filipinos, kailangan talaga ng mag-mobilize on a national scale ng resources, whether it's from the procurement, to the distribution, to the storage, at actually pagbabakuna. So yung reality, to vaccinate 110 million Filipinos, it won't work na private sector lamang. I think we have to accept, kasi pro-government kami sa Ibon we have to accept yung government talaga yung may resources if they wanted to, may authority at may infrastructure to implement a national vaccine program. Ngayon, efficient yung government. In reality, yung government lang ang may sapat na reach to get to 110 million Filipinos. So ang huli ko lang, I agree naman with si Ma'am Angsi, kung may kakayanan naman yung private sector to buy vaccines, to vaccinate on their own account, in that small pocket of vaccination, that might work. Pero ang concern natin dapat, governance question how do we vaccinate 110 million Filipinos in the fastest way possible? And yung reality doon, no matter the efficiency of the private sector, pockets lang maabot ng private sector. We've seen it the way the economy runs, and tendency, if you rely on the private sector, kung politicization ng problema with government resources, with the private sector, yung malapit sa kanila lang, naabot nila. So I think ang dapat gawin natin, take as a matter of premise, the government ang may authority, resources, infrastructure. Ang question, one, how do we make them function more efficiently? Secondly, how do we get the private sector to work with the government to expand yung available resources na yon? And yun lang talagang totoong paraan how to equitably vaccinate the Filipino population. Kasi unfortunately, some are more equal than others. Kung mag-private sector lamang tayo, ang maabot lang nila ay maliit na portion ng population at yung malapit sa kanila. It won't necessarily reach the poorest. The fact na halimbawa, nagka-4Ps, it took the government to reach the poorest Filipinos. At ganun mangyayari, we can't rely on the private sector to reach the poorest Filipinos. Yung government lang makakagawa nun. So para sa amin, mag-revert kami dun sa reality. Yes, let's agonize over the inefficiency of government, but let's not take it as given. How do we make things better in 2021? Let's make government work better with more transparency. Let's make government work better learning from the private sector. Pero ang key doon, organize the effort in a way na minamaximize ang resources ng government, make them behave, not to politicize the distribution, and then mobilize private resources in a coordinated manner with the government. At gusto ko stress talaga yun kasi mag-uunahan sa vaccines Yung mga may pera, bibili ng vaccines yan. At if we leave it lang sa ganong klaseng diskarte ng individuals, of course, we're out after self-interest. We can't have those with the resources dictate, with the private sector resources. We can't have them be the one expecting that they'll follow the protocols. Hindi Those protocols, yung prioritization natin ng vaccine recipients can only be done on a national scale. Hindi siya pwedeng pockets na sa Maynila lamang, or Pasig lamang, or Babuyan Islands lamang, or Batanes lamang. Kanya-kanya yun At yung pagkanya-kanya will guaranteed violate yung prioritization na kinakailangan natin, which has to be done on a national scale.
Sunny, are you optimistic there will be more transparency from the government this year?
They will try their best not to be transparent. I think magandang case study yung ginawa sa PSG, among other things, they will not be transparent. But yun ang point namin, at yun ang pinangahawakan namin as an NGO, as civil society, as the public, as the organized public, we have to demand And sa amin, the worst thing talaga, because pro-government kami, the worst thing is to give up on government. We can't Ang pinakita ng pandemya, the crisis of the pandemic can only be dealt with at the national scale. But then actually, yung crisis ng poverty can also only be dealt with at the national scale. So kumbaga, panghawakan natin yung prinsipyo na kailangan gumalaw ang gobyerno. Tapos mag-all-out effort tayo to criticize constructively para iwasan nila yung galaw nila. And I think yun ang only way na maging mas transparent ang government. The more people demand transparency about where the vaccines were procured, how much was spent, and who's going to be distributing that, kahit kumbaga subcontract natin to the private sector yung pagbibigay because they do have resources lalo sa mga urban centers, gawin natin yon. But at all levels, kailangan ng transparency dun sa saan galing yung vaccines at sino nakatanggap nun. Hindi talaga pwede yung kanya-kanya atomistic na kanya-kanyang bigay na lang then assume na in a positivistic way na eventually maabot natin at hindi Kaya may sobrang rational yung pag-prioritize ng vaccine recipients. Sundan natin yon. And that won't happen kung walang pagpapakatino yung government effort. Wala si Sir Melo, tayo na lang.
Nawala siya.
Okay, nasa Bicol. Okay. Take over, GC, ka naman facilitate.
Nakalagay nga ako na yung host
Ayun.
Pero ako naman, I think siguro just to keep the show running, ano. I think I'm a bit more pessimistic kasi nakita natin doon pa lang sa social amelioration program, ano, 'di ba? Parang April and May, cash transfers lang 'yun. Pero natagalan sila yung for May, I think November, October parang hindi pa tapos. So parang I think pagdating do sa distribution ng vaccines ay hindi sila naging hindi handa talaga. Well, of course, you might say na wala naman talagang handa kasi talaga namang unprecedented crisis ito, ano. Pero doon pa lang sa crafting ng budget, sana siguro na-improve pa nila. There's a lot of room for improvement doon. Pero I think another thing to worry about would be yung inequality. Kasi itong vaccines, this will give rise to a lot of parang mabibring out lahat ng mga issues about inequality in Philippine society, ano, as we see na yung mga may well-to-do at saka may capacity to pay ay sila yung baka mauna dun sa pagbabakuna. Of course, merong priority list and in fact actually yung mom ko sa US na isang nurse, nabakunahan na siya actually nung Pfizer BioNTech vaccine. Talagang nauna naman talaga namang kailangan mauna sila yung mga health workers, ano, yung mga frontliners. Pero personally, I don't expect to be vaccinated this year or siguro until later this year or siguro early next year pa. Tingnan natin. Pero I think talagang masasabi mo na talagang nakasalala yung recovery ng ekonomiya natin dun sa efficient at equitable na distribution ng vaccines.
Yeah, the best scenario talaga, yung possibility na private-public partnership, no? Partly, the government, lista nila yung mga priorities nila, sino unang bibigyan, sila ang mag-distribute, and then, allow the private sector to also do their part, no? Yung mga kaya nila. Kasi there's so much room Hindi naman, it will not come into competition. There's so much room for the private sector to also participate. Pero pinaka-ideal talaga is partnership. Yung ginagawa ng mga corporate ngayon, half for their own factory workers, then half given to the government. Pero on top of that, yung allow them to import and then allow them to be able to distribute more equitably. Ako, kasi kapag private, mas equitable dahil mawawala yung mga political, mga patronage nila eh. Kaya lang, yun nga, sino ang makakapag-import? That's the biggest problem. Sigurado ko yung mga malapit sa kanila. Yung mga naunang vaccines were all from people who are connected, no? Kaya nakapagparating. So, yan, kasi talagang tayo na lang, let's just do what we can in the meantime kasi magiging napaka-false parang fallback natin na malapit na yung vaccine and then everybody will relax. Maling-mali yun eh. Let's just deal with it as if wala pa talagang vaccine, no? Para lahat tayo continue mag-ingat, lalo na yung kumakalat talaga na variant on the face of that. Let's still continue to do what we can do, no, while awaiting the vaccine. I'm not very optimistic kasi na magkakaroon ng vaccine in the last half of this year.
Tapos siguro ang important din, let's hold ourselves to account to the same standards. If we need transparency from the government, actually we also need transparency from the private sector. So, halimbawa, again, I'm not sure kung baka hindi ako updated, kung totoo yung 2.5 million doses coming from private sector donations, I think in the same way na gusto natin sabihin ng government who they're giving the vaccines to, tingnan din natin from the private sector. Kasi that's the only way to ensure na yung rational prioritization na makakatanggap ay masusundan. So ako, I think, yung transparency is a wonderful thing talaga eh. At yung sabi ng palagi cliche, kung takot ka, di ba, wala kang tinatago, be transparent sa sayo.
Okay.
So ingat, sa akin, transparency from the government but also transparency from the private sector na sinusundan yung prioritization ng
All right. Siguro, Sunny, pahabol ko lang, pasensya na kayo, nagpalit ako ng laptop, biglang nawala yung, nawala yung aking laptop eh. Siguro daw, may reaction, yun daw, teka, may sinasabi rito eh. Parang mahalaga rin yung herd immunity. Siguro we can have this discussed thoroughly with doctors to talk about herd immunity, sapagkat mahalagang factor din ito dito sa kaso sa pagbabakuna. Sabi ni Dr. Ted Herbosa, who's a member of the IATF, if you follow Sani's advice, the immunization against COVID-19 will fail definitely. So, alin daw bang bansa yung handa para sa pagbabakuna? Yun ang ilang tanong dito. Kahit yung Amerika may priority list, pero tama rin yung public-private partnership. Okay? At agree siya doon sa sinabi ni Madam Tessie. All right, mga kaibigan, pasensya na po kayo. Biglang nabago yung aking background. I had to change laptops due to some technical difficulties. I'd like to say thank you to everyone who took time out to be with us. Madam Tessie, it's a pleasure to hear from you. Malaking intriga sa akin yung tungkol dun sa tungkol sa 100,000 na nabakunahan ng mga Chino. Kay JC naman, mahalaga rin yung inputs at ganun din kay Sunny. This is another wonderful discussion. Thank you very much for being with us. Have a nice time. Please stay safe. Until next time, have a nice day. Thank you.
Bye, Ma'am Tessie. Bye, JC.
Thank you, Sir Melo.
Happy New Year sa lahat.
Naulitin po. Thank you.
Thank you.
Salamat.
Bye.